Okay, hi guys. It's Mr. Leo here, and today I'm gonna be going over chapter 6 with you guys. All that I ask is for you to go, guys, to pull up the Google form that is on Google Classroom. It's gonna be titled "Understanding Human Development," and you will be using this Google form throughout the lecture in order to be interactive with the presentation and make sure that you guys are paying attention and being interactive. Yeah, I really recommend y'all to pull that up. It's gonna look something like this. So it's gonna look like that, understand human development, and yeah, it's gonna have some questions for you to answer. So yeah, just make sure to have that up and ready to go, and we can begin if this thing cooperates. Let's go. Ooh, sorry, technical difficulties. Let's go. Okay, so chapter 6, understanding human development. So our objective is to distinguish between growth and development because growth and development, they're two very different things. So understanding human development, growth refers to physical change, basically your appearance, your height, usage of muscles, stuff like that. And then stages of development are similar for almost everyone. So everyone basically develops the same way, shape, and form. Um, so this is the first question on that Google form. So for discussion, what is the difference between growth and development? And what do you think is the difference between growth and development? Because they're not the same things. They're kind of similar, but they're not the same. They're two very distinct things. So I want you guys to, pull that up, make sure you answer the question. Full sentences, correct grammar, the regular. And we can begin. Let's go. Another objective is to identify the main types of human development because there are different types of development. We are going to focus on three of those. The first one is physical development. So physical development, it includes our gross motor skills and our fine motor skills. So gross motor skills, this is dealing with, larger muscles such as your arms, your legs, stuff like that. Such actions can include walking or throwing because you're using your hands to throw, which are larger muscles, and walking is including your legs, your thighs, those type of muscles because they're larger. And now fine motor skills, you can remember these because they're fine, they're smaller. So instead of using your larger muscles, now you're using smaller muscles such as your fingers, your jaw, eyelids, stuff like that because they're finer. So fine motor skills, such actions can include picking up objects or eating with a spoon, things like that. Our next one, our second type of development is cognitive development. So cognitive development has to deal with our cognition, which includes knowing, memorizing, sensing, and organizing. So as we see in the picture, the baby is out here, playing and, having a fun time. So if you guys have ever, seen babies with the what are they called? The shapes, and they have to put them in the correct shape. That's kind of cognitive development because they know, hey, it's not gonna fit in here, or hey, it is gonna fit in here.
Yeah.
So in addition to cognitive development, we can also hear it being called intellectual development because it's basically the same thing, intellectual and cognitive. Um, Cognitive development develops over time. This is not just a, toddler age kids or middle school age. No, this is a over time that increases. And then cognition, it has connections between brain nerve cells, which are key to cognitive development. So our brain plays a big role in the cognitive development. And then brain connection strengthened with experience starting in infancy. So yes, we do start from infancy developing our cognition. Our third type of development is social emotional development. Now, this one is one that a lot of people can go through and can be very obvious to the eye. So, emotional development, this includes, relationships, feelings, social skills, self-confidence and self-esteem, self-control. Social emotional development doesn't just deal with outsiders or outside people. It has to deal with ourselves and, being, developing well, a good mindset about ourselves, finding self-love, that self-love, in addition, challenges increase as development progresses. So as we develop and we, grow into a more mature age, um, there are challenges that come about in that, we begin to, be more open-minded, go out more, and we begin to realize things that we never thought, we would actually have to worry about, but yet, we have to worry about at this point in our society. So yeah, that's kind of what social emotional development brings upon us. Those were the three types of development. Now, another objective is to develop examples that illustrate principles of development. So principles of human development is relatively orderly. So there is an orderly fashion to development. Um, developing is gradual and a continual process. Just as I said before, it is something that happens over time. It's not just something that happens, in one age or another age. Development is interrelated and development varies among individuals. So not everyone is going to develop at the same pace or at the same, in the same ways. An example of this can be, with females, their chest might not develop at the same age, or with guys, their voices might not deepen, like other guys, in the same age group. So stuff like that. So development is relatively orderly. So development occurs in a sequence of steps. So there are steps to development. Predictable steps consistently follow one after another. And how teachers can use this is by, designing appropriate learning strategies for their students. Because, at each grade level, there are certain requirements that students have to meet, and this is, why we make TEKS, because TEKS in Texas, they determine what a student should meet and should be like required to, know and understand. So here goes the second discussion question on the Google Forms. So give examples of how development occurs in predictable steps. So let's for example, let's take, well, I'll give y'all like an example, but don't use this in y'all's Google form. Let's say, math skills. Math is a good example. In preschool age, they learn to add, subtract, then they go on to multiplying, then they go on to dividing, then they go on to, making equations, and then they go on to quadratics, and then so on and so forth, and derivatives and all this other extra stuff. So that's kind of an example of how like it can be a predictable step, if that makes sense. So development is a gradual, continual process. So development changes happen gradually. This is not just gonna be an overnight thing. You're not just gonna grow 1 foot overnight. This is gonna happen over time. It's gonna take its time. So this is why sometimes parents tell their children, just give it time. It's gonna happen soon, because development doesn't just happen overnight. They become a parent overnight, over time. Sorry, over time. So as time goes on, you begin to notice differences between each other. You might see, these girls having like their chests and stuff, and then the guys, their voice deepens, stuff like that, facial hair, stuff like that. So development is interrelated. Acquiring new skills requires gains in several areas. So physical development, cognitive development, social development, and emotional development. Now here goes a reflection question that's also on the Google Forms. So as a teen, in what ways have you developed physically, cognitively, socially, and emotionally? Make sure to respond to each question and, give me an example of how you have developed throughout each stage. Moving forward. Development varies among individuals. Many factors affect development. Each person's progress is unique, and in addition to that, different rates and slightly different time schedules. So, as I said previously, not everyone's gonna develop the same, the same things as other people at the same time. As I said previously, the chest and the voice and the facial hair. Not everyone's gonna develop that at the same time. There's gonna be differences and changes of time and schedules and stuff like that. Moving on to our next objective, define a developmental theory. Apply developmental theories to real life situations. So with this whole development, physical development, cognitive development, and social emotional development, come theories and theorists. So there have been many different people and many different theories that have come about with different ideas and different concepts as to how like us humans develop over time. So theories of development. Researchers formulate developmental theories by this is how people develop theories basically. For starters, they analyze behavior and development. So how do people act, or how does their body change? Observing people, looking at their appearance, looking how they look, physically, and then their cognitive and their social emotional, and then performing experiments. Yes, you have to perform experiments in order to validate your theory. Considering earlier research studies. This is a major one because, many theories look back to other theories, and they referred their ideas to their ideas. So it was kind of, a cross connection, if that makes sense. So developmental theories help teachers. This is how they help teachers by it helps them to understand what students are capable and why, and they get a broader picture that limited experiences and observation people. In addition, many developmental theories exist. So many teachers, they might stick to one theory, but another teacher might stick to another. It's just a matter of what the teacher thinks is correct. Moving on, we have the heredity versus environment. This is one of the first theories out there. So this basically has to do with nature versus nurture. Nature meaning heredity and nurture meaning environment. So this was basically saying that people were either their development was either affected by their hereditary traits or the environmental traits. So they both can influence the one's development. So both hereditary and environmental factors can affect one's development. So researchers question how large a part each plays in development. So which one affects a person more, the heredity or the environment? In addition to that, genetics. Genetics affect biological, intellectual, and environmental factors. So behaviors involve multiple genes affected by a variety of environmental factors, and no single gene determines one's behavior. So there's not one gene in our body that's going to determine why we act the way we act. Simple as that. And then some examples of environmental factors can include family, peers, community, media, health, nutrition, and physical activity. And we're going to go through each one of those and um, how each factor can affect one's development. So family can affect one's development because everyone has different beliefs, different ways of raising children, and different cultures, different religions. So this is how it can affect one's development, because everyone is just they have different ways of raising children and stuff like that, different techniques. We can our peers can affect our development because as we begin to become more social and we make new friends, they can teach us things that we never knew were like were actually true. So for instance, they can share their ideas or their beliefs with us, and we might be like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool, and we might follow their steps, and that's how it can affect our development. The community. So how can our community affect our development? Well, let's say for instance, you live in an urban area, and then you all of a sudden move to a rural area. You're not used to living in a rural environment, so and you get affected by the urbanization and the instead of being in a rural community. And then relationships with feelings or self-worth, and some offer more cultural opportunities. So as I was saying, maybe you move from a rural area and then go to an urban area. There might be different cultures there. You just never know what you're gonna face. Now, how to have the media has become a major part of affecting one's development, and this is because um, as social media, grows and it prospers around the world, um, we begin to look up to all these different celebrities and different, artists, and we think, hey, that's the goal, you know, that's what we're supposed to strive for. We begin to look at these different influencers and these different celebrities as, you know, role models in a way, and that's how we're supposed to, you know, be. But that's not true. We just had to, you know, follow our dreams and follow our own paths basically. And the media is often blamed for social problems. It depends on how a person interprets messages, and effects may not be immediately apparent. So as I said, you know, you might not be affected by it as much as you would by, you know, your family, but it still can affect you, especially with your, like, you know, body positivity, or, you know, um politically wise, it can affect you in that sort. Health. There are many different diseases and illnesses that can interrupt, you know, one's development. For example, you know, cancer or HIV, AIDS, stuff like that can affect one's development. Nutrition and physical activity. So if someone's, you know, into sports or into athletics, they can develop stuff faster than other people. On to our next reflection question. Which do you think has influenced your development more, heredity or environment? So have you been affected by your hereditary traits more, or your environmental traits more? Go ahead and respond to that at the Google Forms while you can. You know, might as well just knock it out the way. Need to stay hydrated. Moving forward, behaviorist theories. So this is one of the other theories that we're gonna talk about. So behaviorism, behavior is determined by forces in the environment beyond individuals' control. So people's thoughts, feelings, and actions depend on experience rather than genetics or free will. Infants are blank screens. So this is basically saying that, you know, um, once we're born, we're basically, you know, blank screens, and we're basically a journal that gets written on all over, and, you know, we intake all this different information, and we just store it and keep storing it and keep storing it. That's what this is basically saying, that our thoughts and feelings and actions, it depends on what we experience and what we go through, rather than, you know, our genetic background. Um, Moving on to our next theory, Pavlov's classical conditioning. So classical conditioning is said to be, you know, behaviors. Uh, the behaviors are associated with response. So Pavlov held an experiment when he was conducting his, you know, theory. He was conducting this experiment with dogs. He would bring them food every time he would ring a bell. So he would ring a bell and he'd feed the dog. So as he did this repetitively, the dog started, you know, getting accustomed to that to the ringing bell, and it would, you know, salivate, and, you know, it would know, hey, I'm about to get fed. So, and even when he wouldn't give him food, like when Pavlov wouldn't give the dog food, the dog would still salivate, because it would think to itself, hey, that's the bell. It's dinner time basically. So this is what it's basically saying. If you condition something enough, they'll they'll begin to, you know, develop a sort of, you know, instinct, if that makes sense. Classical conditioning may occur without training, so you don't have to basically do, like, train someone to understand that instinct. For instance, you know, it can be like, you know, immediate, hey, whoa, don't do that, or hey, I gotta do that. For instance, we can take a toddler, you know, hearing the door knock, someone knock on the door. They can think to themselves, hey, oh my God, where's mommy? Like, someone's at the door. Mommy, someone's like knocking at the door. Something like that. They do it repetitive over time. They know that that's an instinct to, you know, not open the door, go get mommy or daddy, you know. And that's kind of an example of something that can occur without training. Moving on to Skinner. So Skinner's operant conditioning. He basically said that operant conditioning meant that people repeat behaviors that have positive results. So, you know, let's take for example, you know, another child at a grocery store, right? When have you guys, you know, ever seen, you know, a kid throwing a tantrum because his mom didn't want to buy him a lollipop or something like that? Right? You see them like get their tantrums, they throw their tantrums, they cry, they yell, and at the end of the day, they don't get their lollipop, right? Versus a child who, you know, grabs the lollipop, goes up to their mom and says, hey mom, can I get this lollipop please? Then what do? They get rewarded and they get their lollipop, right? For doing the corrective action. So Skinner basically said that reinforcement should be removed gradually in unpredictable patterns. So if the child keeps doing something over and over that's not right, punish them. But as time goes on, gradually, take that punishment down as they, begin to progress, like, and understand what's right. Negative reinforcement, also known as punishment, can reduce unwanted behavior. So if you punish your child, hey, they're gonna know not to do that, or else they're gonna go to timeout, or they're not gonna get what they want. Simple as that. Moving on to Bandura's social cognitive theory. He basically said that people of all ages observe and they imitate others' behaviors, basically saying, hey, if I see someone do that, I want to do that. In this picture, we see, a toddler wearing heels, right? We see this everywhere, and y'all can't lie to me. I know all of y'all have done this, boys and girls. Y'all see y'all's mom or y'all dad when y'all were a toddler, and y'all saw them wearing something, cologne, high heels, perfume, dresses, makeup, and you were like, hey, I want to do that. I want to do that to myself. And what'd you do? You went ahead and did it, right? You put on your dad's cologne. You put on your mom's dress. Guys and girls, y'all both put the heels on because y'all were like, hey, that's cool, right? So yeah, that's basically what Bandura was saying. People imitate each other. Reactions to rewards and punishments are filtered by perceptions, thoughts, and motivation. So the way we react to things, for instance, if we hear our mom yelling at us for wearing makeup, what do? We don't do it again because we don't want our mom to yell at us. Or if our mom sees us in her dress and she's like, hey, you look nice, what do? We're gonna keep doing it, right? That's basically what this is kind of saying. The reactions and rewards or punishments, they're gonna affect how we do things, and then each person's response is based on personal reactions and the way the individual processes information. Now moving on to Piaget's cognitive theory. He basically stated that there were 4 stages to cognitive development, and that at each stage individuals incorporate what they learn into skills developed in previous stages. He also said that children base their thinking on what they learn through their senses. Let's see. Here go the 4 different types of steps towards cognitive development. So the first one states that it's sensory motor. Basically, it starts from birth to the age of 2, and this is basically saying that these children in this age group, they learn through their senses. Their sight, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting. Basically that's, and this kind of common sense because when they're little, right, they use their hands a lot. They like to grasp onto things. They like to lick things and stuff like that, right? We see that everywhere. And then that's sensory motor because they use their senses. And then pre-operational, this runs through the ages of 2 and 7. Basically, this is saying that children in this age group, they communicate through language. So at the age of 2 through 7, this is when kids they their language basically what's the word, it improves. So they improve in their language, so they begin to learn new words, how to ask for things, how to um ask for help, and how to communicate with their parents and stuff like that, right? So this is the pre-operational stage because this is before, I don't know, I was trying to link it. Anyways, moving on to the third step, concrete operational. This is gonna run from the ages of 7 to 11. Basically, this is when children begin to think and solve problems. So, let's say for instance, if a child spills a drink, right? They know, hey, I need to clean this up, but how do I clean it up, right? That's basically what this step of development is. It's basically when they start solving problems and thinking logically. Moving on to the next one, formal operational. This runs from the ages of 11 and up. This is when children and people in general begin to think logically and abstractly, and they begin to make predictions. So let's say, for instance, okay, let's say, for instance, someone's at school and they get a bad grade. They can think to themselves and they can be, oh, dang, I failed math. What's gonna happen? Oh, I'm probably gonna get punished when I get home. Something like that. Something along those lines, if that makes sense. Okay. Moving on to Bruner's constructive. Oh wait, is that the same thing? No, that's different. Bruner's constructivist theory. So Bruner's constructivist theory basically stated that learning is active and best when students learn in context, including past experiences, knowledge, and current reality. So Bruner calls this theory constructivism. A way to remember this is because if any of you guys know what constructive criticism is, this is going to be an easy way to remember this, because constructive criticism is basically when you give you criticize someone, but in a way that's going to help them and help them improve. We know a good example is a girl doing makeup, right? And she does her eyebrows too dark, or her eyeliner's too big, right? Someone can, like, tell her, hey, your eyeliner's too long, or your eyebrows are too dark. Maybe you can try this product instead, because I use it and I like how it feathers out my eyebrows, or something like that, right? Something along those lines. So that's kind of what this is basically saying, that we learn from our past experiences, our knowledge, and our current reality. um Bruner's constructive theory is extended. The lack of readiness and ability to learn come from many sources. So Bruner states teachers must be concerned with the context of learning, which includes being cognizant of students' challenges. So, making sure that you know what students are challenged with and what they go through. Moving forward, it also states that removing barriers and finding appropriate ways to help students learn, presenting material in developmentally appropriate ways. So make sure that you accommodate to your students their level, basically. So if if they have issues with reading, you can make sure that you find ways to um, make them feel welcome, and what's the word? Dang, I'm a lost of words. um Make them feel welcome and included, if that makes sense. In addition, teachers encourage students to discover new learning through active dialogue or Socratic learning. Teachers ask probing questions, and the students answer questions with additional questions and discussion. Moving forward, we have Vygotsky. So Vygotsky's social cultural theory basically stated that children are social beings. We are social. And he basically stated that we develop through interactions with our parents, teachers, or other students, and that social interactions is critical to cognitive development. So basically saying that we have to be social, and we learn through, people. Moving on to Kolb's experimental learning theory. He stated that students learn best by doing or through experimental learning, which can result in gaining new skills, new ways of thinking. Basically, it's saying experiment, take risk, do your own thing, right? Experiential learning has 4 elements. Keep these 4 in mind. 4 elements: concrete experience, observation and reflection, formal of hypotheses, and testing of hypotheses. So these 4 elements are basically saying, the first one, concrete experience, is basically saying the experience that you went through, right? Let's take for instance, I'm trying to come up with an example real quick. Okay, let's say that you had a glass of hot, you put a glass of milk in the microwave, right? You open it because it's done, heating up, but you instantly touch the cup and it burns you. Concrete experience is that you burned yourself grabbing that mug. Observation and reflection. Now this is the second step, right? Observation and reflection is basically saying you're going to observe what you did and you're going to reflect on what happened. So you're going to think to yourself, okay, I put the cup of milk in the microwave, I heated it to this time, and then I opened it when it was done. I touched it with my bare hand right when I took it when I was going to take it out, right? Moving to the next step, the third step, formation of hypotheses. This is when we think of ways to do things differently, right? So what could have we done to prevent us from burning our hands, right? So let's say, for instance, you could say, oh, I could have, grabbed a rag to grab it, or I could have left it a minute to cool down. That's forming a hypothesis. Then comes testing the hypotheses. So you're gonna, take all that knowledge that you acquired, all the formation of your hypotheses, and you're gonna put it to the test and see if it works. So you might heat your milk up again the next night and say, okay, let me do this now. You grab your rag, you grab the cup, but you still burn yourself. Oof, suck, sucks. So now, what would you do? You would go through those 4 steps all over again. But that's basically a run through of how these 4 elements work. Now we're moving on to Erikson's psychosocial theory. Erikson basically stated that there was 8 stages to one's development. And he basically stated that each stage people face and must successfully resolve a psychological or social conflict, and unsuccessful resolution affects future stages of development. So here go the 8 steps to Erikson's theory. So at the stage of infancy, our task is to complete trust versus mistrust. This is basically when, a toddler gains trust for someone or gains trust for people in general. If any of you have, carried a newborn, right? What do they do when they get carried by someone new? They cry, right? That's because they don't trust you yet. They haven't seen you and they haven't got accustomed to you yet. And that's kind of what this is basically saying. They have to build that trust. At the stage of toddler, the task is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is stating that that toddlers should take risk and they shouldn't doubt themselves. Basically, this is when they start, walking and crawling, stuff like that. Especially with walking. Walking is a really good example because sometimes they get up and what do? They fall back down. But they shouldn't doubt themselves or they shouldn't shame themselves for not being able to do it. They should, build that confidence up and, know that they can do it. Moving on to the next step, early childhood. This is when initiative versus guilt comes in. So let's say, for instance, uh, a kid is running around the living room and they know they shouldn't be running around. They trip and they make a vase fall and it breaks. This is basically kind of what it's talking about. They feel guilty, but they should take initiative of their actions and they should know, hey, I need to go tell my mom. Mom, I broke the vase. I know I shouldn't have been running around the living room. I won't do it again. Basically what this is talking about. Moving on to middle childhood, industry versus inferiority. This is when we begin to venture out and to how do I explain it? Let me see if I can find I had a really good chart that really went into detail about this. This one kind of gets me a little. Let's see. Here it goes. Okay. Oh no, that's not what I was trying to do. Here it goes. So where were we? Industry versus inferiority. Children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to task or they feel inferior. Okay, so this is basically saying, okay, so when kids see their mom or their dad um taking out the groceries from the what is it called? The back of the car, right? They're taking groceries from the back of the car, putting them inside, right? What do kids usually do? They run over and they're like, "Mom, mom, mom, I want to help. Give me some bags," right? They get all these bags, and what happens usually? They drop them. This is kind of what they're trying to say. If they don't take initiative and they don't feel the pleasure of applying themselves, they can feel inferior or they just don't feel useful if that makes sense. Oops, that's not what I was trying to do. Oh wow. Why didn't it do that? Okay. Oh no, where'd I go? Okay, did I stop sharing my screen? Hmm, not me having technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. We're back on track. Moving on. We were at middle childhood. Now we're going to adolescence. This is basically saying identity versus role confusion. So, as many of you know, in high school, this is when people try to, or they start to find out who their true selves are. So this is when people start to realize their sexualities or their race, not race, their religions and stuff like that. They begin to find their true self, their true identity. Um, and yeah, that's basically what it is. Moving on to young adulthood, intimacy versus isolation. This is when young adults begin to venture out and they start finding soulmates and dating and marriage and stuff like that. And if they don't find someone that can be their soulmate, they kind of isolate themselves and they feel like they can't be a part of that. And then moving on to the next stage, which is middle adulthood. This is generativity versus absorption. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. But this is basically saying that this is when young adults begin to become part of their community and they start to help out their community and stuff like that. They begin to put themselves out there for the community and community service, community activity, stuff like that. Anything to do with community. Let me see if this can kind of explain it a bit more. The middle age discover a sense of contributing to the world, usually through family and work, or they may feel a lack of purpose. That's basically kind of what I was trying to say. Um, And the last step of Erickson's theory was at the stage of older adulthood, integrity versus despair. This is when uh, older people and stuff, they begin to realize they start to reflect on what they did in their life and if they actually accomplished something or if they just failed at life. Simple as that. That's basically what this stage of Erickson's theory was talking about. Reflection time. So go to your Google Forms and answer this reflection question. Which of Erickson's stages have you already successfully completed? How do you know? So tell me, what stage have you completed? And how do you know? What has made you think of that? I'll give y'all a second to answer that. Okay, moving forward. Kolber's theory of moral development. Um, Kolber was basically saying that everyone follows the same progression and that not everyone attains the highest level, right? He had um three stages of moral development, right? There was pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional morality. Uh, Pre-conventional morality is basically stating whether or not one's behavior is affected by punishments or rewards. So, for instance, the whole lollipop situation with the kids at the store, if they get punished because of their tantrums and stuff, or if they get, rewarded because of their kindness and their honesty. And then conventional morality is motivated by society's laws and rules. So this is when we, begin to follow rules and laws of our society, right? And then post-conventional morality is decisions based on principles and motivated by integrity. So principles and motivated by integrity basically meaning common sense in a way. Or like, things that make sense, if that makes sense. Sorry. In addition, uh, Kolber believed that children and teens should move to the next level of moral development instead of being taught about specific virtue. So he basically stated that, children and teens should not stick to one level of moral morality. They should just move forward. And then he also didn't observe girls. He just thought that girls weren't a thing. So he basically uh placed this experiment on guys and men and boys. And Carol Gilligan, she believed that women used ideas such as caring as a factor in making moral decisions. Moving on to our next objective. We have to analyze how developmental theories impact teaching, because of course we have to tie this back to teaching, right? So which theory is correct? All theories are kind of correct at some level or some extent, right? There's no wrong or right answer. And some theories may be more sound than others. So, you might think that Colbert was kind of crazy with his theory, but you might think that Piaget had a good reason. But at the end of the day, everyone has their own opinions, and this is how conflicts between theories, it doesn't really affect it in any way, but it does lead to more valid insight, meaning that we begin to view things differently. So, if I say that, I believe Piaget was right, and Ms. Price says no, Colbert was right, or that Vygotsky's theory was right, because yada yada yada, and I say no, this is Colbert was right because yada yada yada, and then we both come to terms. Well, hey, what if Colbert and Vygotsky's both had some type of connection? What if it's actually like this? That's kind of what this is basically stating. Teachers can benefit from understanding several approaches and applying them in classroom. So if teachers, broaden their spectrum, I think that's the word I'm trying to use. If they broaden their, their ideas and stuff, they can find different techniques to use in their classroom, right? Oh, another discussion question. Would you look at that? So go to your Google Forms and answer this one. Which theory discussed do you think would be most valuable to you as a teacher, and why? So tell me, which theory do you think would fit your classroom? What would you implement and why? Take a minute to answer that. And we should be good to go. So some key points to keep in mind. Principles of development help in understanding how people change throughout life. Researchers from developmental theories base their observations on experiments. And teachers use these theories to help promote their students' development, right? Okay, let's do a little review. So for this one, blank skills depend on the developmental of small muscles. Remember, small. What did I say small was? If you said fine motor, you are correct. Good job. Remember, fine, small. Name 4 basic principles of human development. Remember, I told y'all, had to keep this 4 in mind because these are very critical. What were those? Those 4. If you said development is relatively orderly, is gradual, continual process, is interrelated, or varies among individuals, you are correct. Good job, you guys. Good job. Moving on to the next one. Which behaviorists developed the theory of operant conditioning? Operant conditioning. Do you remember? What theorist was it? You remember? Tell me. All right, let's go. If you said B.F. Skinner, you're correct. Good job. Good job, guys. Remember, B.F. Skinner said that, I'm sorry, I just went blank. He developed a theory of operant conditioning. Sorry, you guys. Okay, what are the 4 stages of Piaget's cognitive theory? Piaget, cognitive theory. Give you a second to think about that. Sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. You can remember this by sensory motor, senses, sensory motor. And then just remember operational, operational. Yeah, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Simple as that. Last one, you guys. Bruner's theory that involves interacting with new knowledge by forming hypotheses, testing, and making decisions is called, what was it called? Hypotheses, testing it out. What was it called? Constructivism. Constructivism, because you're giving constructive criticism and you are conducting constructivism. Remember that. Oh, one more. Sorry, you guys. One more. What are the 4 elements of experimental learning? Experimental learning. Experiments. Experimental learning. What are the 4 elements? If you said concrete experience, observation and reflection, formation of a hypothesis, and testing the hypotheses, you are correct. Remember, these are the 4 steps or 4 elements for experimental learning. And that is it, you guys. Just make sure that you guys do that Google Forms that's on Google Classroom, and there will be an assessment with this. So make sure that you were taking notes and make sure that you took this information seriously. The PowerPoint should be linked to the Google Classroom as well, so you can go back and view the PowerPoint at any time. You can print it out, or you can take notes, or you can go back to the video, pause it and jot down important key points. Anything to just help you remember this stuff. But yeah, I hope you guys had a fun time. I haven't seen y'all, or I haven't interacted with many of y'all, but I hope y'all had a good time, learning about the theories and ways we develop. And yeah, it was good. It was good teaching y'all. All right. Well, y'all have fun. Have a great rest of your day, and make sure you do your work. Okay. I will be waiting for it. Bye, guys.